Lareal Williams Jr. didn't just want out of his deal with Gucci Mane, he wanted money, control, and ownership of his own future. And federal prosecutors say he was ready to go to extreme lengths to make that happen. What nobody anticipated, though, was how badly that plan would backfire. While Pooh Shiesty was allegedly out here plotting his escape from 1017 records, Gucci Mane was already sitting comfortably in exactly the right position. He didn't need to chase anything, he just had to wait. When Pooh Shiesty ended up in a federal holding cell, Gucci Mane wasted zero time. He dropped the album, opened the floodgates, and watched the money pour in. All Eyes on Shy shot straight to #1 on the US Apple Music chart, and every dollar that came from it flowed right back into the same pockets Pooh Shiesty had allegedly been trying to escape. That's the kind of irony that doesn't need any extra explanation. Stick with us here, because what Gucci Mane actually walked away with from this entire situation is a number that's going to hit differently once you hear it out loud. So, today we're breaking down the full picture. How Gucci Mane ended up pulling in an estimated $20 to $25 million off Pooh Shiesty's music, off the new album and off the chaos that followed, and how the very move Pooh Shiesty made to free himself might have actually cemented Gucci Mane into an even stronger financial position than before. Let's get into it. To really understand how all of this landed where it did, you've got to go back to the beginning. Pooh Shiesty was born Lareal Williams Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee, and he signed with Gucci Mane's 1017 records back in 2020. At the time, that was one of the most logical moves a young Memphis rapper could make. Gucci Mane had spent years building 1017 into one of the most respected independent label structures in the entire industry, backed by a joint deal with Atlantic Records that gave his artists real access to major label distribution and major label promotion. For a young artist trying to break out of Memphis and get into the national conversation, that kind of infrastructure wasn't just helpful, it was necessary, and Pooh Shiesty delivered on every bit of that investment. His 2021 mixtape, Shy Season, became one of the most talked about rap projects of that entire year. His single, Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, was more than a hit. It was a defining record. It charted nationally, stacked up hundreds of millions of streams, and locked his name into the upper tier of emerging rap artists across the country. He was raw, he was cold, and his Memphis sound connected with people in ways that most new artists simply don't manage in their first run. The streets heard him, and they responded. By the time that early momentum slowed down, Pooh Shiesty had become one of the most commercially valuable artists on the entire 1017 roster. His catalog was generating serious money, and every bit of that revenue was running through the same label structure he had signed into. Gucci Mane built it, and Pooh Shiesty's success was feeding directly into it. Then came the first federal case. In 2022, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to a federal firearms conspiracy charge and was sentenced to 63 months in federal prison. He served roughly 3 years before being released in October 2025. When he walked out, the fan base was ready. The catalog had never stopped streaming throughout his time away, and Pooh Shiesty had every reason to believe his career was primed for a serious second chapter. The question was whether the situation he was walking back into was going to let that happen. That's where the story takes a hard turn. Federal prosecutors say that during the transition period after signing, Pooh Shiesty grew deeply frustrated with the terms of his 1017 contract. His music was pulling in serious money. Streams were stacking up, his name was everywhere. But the amount landing in his actual pocket didn't come close to matching what he believed he was worth. That kind of disconnect doesn't just sting financially, it eats at you. And honestly, that gap is one of the oldest wounds in the music business. The difference between what an artist generates and what they actually take home is staggering, and most fans have no idea how wide that chasm really is. For Pooh Shiesty, by many accounts, it became impossible to ignore. So, let's slow down and really break down how the money actually moves in. This industry. Because without understanding that, the rest of this story doesn't fully land. When a song pulls 1 million streams on Spotify, no one's walking away with $1 million. The platform pays out somewhere between $3 and $5 per 1,000 streams on average. Do the math, and 1 million streams might generate somewhere in the range of $3,000 to $5,000 in gross streaming revenue. That's it. But that money doesn't go straight to the artist, not even close. It flows first to whoever controls the master recording of the song, and in most cases, that's the label. The label then takes its cut before anyone else sees a dime, and that cut can run anywhere from 60 to 80% of the total revenue. After the label pulls its share, the artist receives their royalty rate, which on a standard industry deal typically lands somewhere between 15 and 25% of whatever's left. By the time the math is done, that million stream milestone starts looking a lot less impressive. Now, layer something called recoupment on top of all that, and the picture gets even harder to look at. Recoupment is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire music business, even by a lot of people who work inside it. When a label fronts money to an artist, whether that's for studio time, music videos, promotional campaigns, travel, or even basic living expenses, that money isn't charity. It's a loan that gets paid back directly out of the artist's future royalties before the artist ever sees a royalty check. Think about what that actually means in practice. An artist can have a certified hit, a platinum project, millions of streams, sold-out shows, and still receive a check for $0 from their label while that recoupment balance is being chipped away. The label is profiting. The song is charting. The artist is watching their name blow up in real time and still getting nothing deposited in their account. That's not hypothetical. That happens constantly. And it's precisely the kind of pressure that can push someone already feeling squeezed right over the edge. According to prosecutors, that is exactly the environment Pooh Shiesty found himself in. By early 2026, he had reportedly been in contact with Yo Gotti's CMG Records about a potential deal. Whether those conversations were a genuine attempt to switch camps or simply a power move to create leverage against 1017 is not entirely clear from the court filings. But what prosecutors allege is that Pooh Shiesty stopped waiting for a resolution and decided to handle things himself. In January of 2026, according to federal prosecutors and court documents, Pooh Shiesty allegedly set up what looked on the surface like a standard business meeting at a recording studio in Dallas, Texas. The framing was simple, a sit-down to talk through contract terms. Gucci Mane, taking the meeting at face value as a legitimate business conversation, showed up. What prosecutors allege happened next is one of the most jaw-dropping moments this industry has seen in years, and it's what turned a contract dispute into a federal case. Prosecutors laid out a damning picture of what happened inside that studio. According to their allegations, Pooh Shiesty, his father Lone Trail Williams Sr., Big 30, and 6 other associates didn't just show up for a conversation. They turned that meeting into something far more dangerous. Pooh Shiesty allegedly pulled out an AK-style pistol and pointed it straight at Gucci Mane. Big 30 allegedly planted himself in front of the exit, cutting off any escape route. And the group reportedly forced one of Gucci Mane's associates to sign paperwork designed to release Pooh Shiesty from his 1017 Records contract. That's the core of what federal prosecutors are alleging, not a negotiation, a shakedown. But here's the detail that really buried them. Big 30 allegedly filmed the whole thing on his phone. The entire confrontation captured on video by one of the people involved in it. Federal prosecutors later recovered that footage, and it became one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the entire case. It's hard to overstate how damaging that is. Whatever argument the defense might construct, that footage exists, and the government has it. The robbery itself was extensive. Court filings allege the group walked away with approximately $450,000 worth of cash and high-end jewelry taken from the people inside that studio. That included Gucci Mane's wedding band, custom earrings, and Rolex watches. These weren't small items grabbed in the chaos. These were personal, recognizable, and valuable possessions stripped from people who had no real option to fight back. Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and multiple co-defendants were eventually arrested and hit with federal kidnapping and robbery charges. If convicted on those counts, they're looking at the possibility of a life sentence. Their trial is currently scheduled for February 2027, and all defendants have entered not guilty pleas. Now here's where the legal side of this story gets genuinely interesting, because what allegedly happened in that studio doesn't just raise criminal questions, it collapses the entire point of the operation. Any contract signed under duress, meaning a party was physically threatened or coerced into signing, is considered involuntary. And an involuntary contract is unenforceable. That's not a loophole or a technicality. It's one of the most basic principles in contract law. It doesn't matter that a pen touch paper. It doesn't matter that signatures appear on the document. A contract signed at gunpoint carries zero legal weight in any court, and it gets even worse for the alleged plan. During Pooh Shiesty's detention hearing, the FBI noted they didn't even have the alleged contract in their possession as evidence, meaning the document that was supposedly forced out of someone at the barrel of a gun wasn't even confirmed to exist in a recoverable form. The legal foundation for the whole scheme was non-existent before the ink had even dried. Pooh Shiesty allegedly risked his freedom, his future, and potentially the rest of his life over a piece of paper that never actually freed him from anything. So, Gucci Mane responded the only way Gucci Mane responds. He made a record. The track was called Crash Dummy, produced by Zovan, and it dropped on April 10th, 2026. The timing was sharp. It came just days after Pooh Shiesty was denied bond and ordered to remain in federal custody while awaiting trial. Gucci Mane didn't name him directly. He didn't have to. Every single line landed exactly where it was aimed. He rapped about a business meeting that flipped into a setup. He talked about walking into a room and feeling the tension rise around him. He described being greeted warmly by someone who was plotting against him the whole time. He referenced Birdman and Cash Money. He drew a direct comparison to Suge Knight. He made it clear, explicitly, that he wasn't going out like Eazy-E. These weren't random references. Every name, every comparison, every bar was constructed to tell a specific story to anyone paying attention. And then came the line that made the internet genuinely stop. After everything, the alleged ambush, the forced paperwork, the robbery, the federal arrests, Gucci Mane told his listeners plainly that Pooh Shiesty was still signed to him. Still. The message wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. It was a public declaration that whatever that paperwork was intended to accomplish, it had accomplished absolutely nothing. The business relationship remained his on his terms, and everything that followed only proved him right. On August 7th, 2026, while Pooh Shiesty sat in federal custody waiting for his trial to begin, Gucci Mane made a move. He greenlit the release of All Eyes on Shiesty, and the album dropped through 1017 Global Music and Atlantic Recording Corporation. Read that back slowly. The same man that Pooh Shiesty allegedly held at gunpoint was the one who decided when that album hit streaming platforms. Think about what that actually means. The label structure that Pooh Shiesty allegedly put his freedom on the line to break free from was the exact same structure with his name on the copyright line. Gucci Mane didn't just hold on to ownership, he activated it. He used that ownership to drop the project, watch the streams pile up, and collect money while his former artist sat inside a federal holding cell with no say in any of it. And then there's the layer on top of that, the one that hip-hop circles haven't stopped bringing up. Rumors, reportedly amplified by members of Pooh Shiesty's own family, have been circulating about serious financial hardship. The people closest to him have allegedly been vocal about money being tight, and when you look at where the revenue is actually going, it starts to make a lot of sense. The 7% he's entitled to under his contract is reportedly being funneled almost entirely into his mounting federal legal fees. So here's where things stand. The music is working, the streams are climbing, the album is charting, and Pooh Shiesty is not seeing meaningful income from any of it. The machine keeps moving, the numbers keep growing, and the artist at the center of it all is sitting behind bars watching it happen from the outside. All Eyes on Shiesty is a 16-track project featuring Glorilla, Sexy Y Red, Big 30, K Carbon, and Baby Slime. Production credits include the late Tay Keith, Mikes and Keys, and others. The album opens with I'm Back and moves through records like Federal Reality, Last Man Breathing, Reckless Living, Reap What You Sow, Bigger Than the Program, and Collecting Tears. Every title feels deliberate. This is a project built around survival, confinement, and what it looks like when a man has lived multiple versions of being trapped inside a system, literally and figuratively at the same time. The audience showed up immediately, and in a big way. On day one, All Eyes on Shiesty hit #1 on the US Apple Music All Genre chart. knocking Ariana Grande's project out of the top spot in the process. And that's not the hip-hop chart, not the rap chart, not even the R&B chart. That is every single genre combined. Pop, country, R&B, everything stacked into one list. Pooh Shiesty's album was sitting at the very top of that entire ranking from behind federal bars. What makes that achievement even harder to ignore is the way the rollout happened. Details about the project and its lead single were announced just days before the actual release date. There was no traditional press campaign, no radio run, no morning show appearances, no performances. The artist wasn't even free, and the album still hit #1. That kind of chart performance with that kind of rollout is almost unheard of, and it speaks to just how locked in Pooh Shiesty's fanbase actually is. But the Apple Music chart was just the opening act. Industry trackers projected all eyes on Shiesty to debut at #9 on the Billboard 200, with approximately 40,000 album equivalent units in its first week. For a project with no traditional promotional push, no artist availability, and a release that caught most of the industry off guard, that number is a serious statement about where Pooh Shiesty stands as a commercial force in this genre. The album landed at #7 on the Billboard 200, beating early projections and marking one of the stronger commercial debuts any rapper has pulled off in 2026. What makes that number hit different is the context around it. Pooh Shiesty wasn't doing press runs or radio interviews or posting on Instagram to push the rollout. He was sitting in federal custody with a trial date locked in for February 2027. That's not a normal album cycle. That's something else entirely. To understand just how significant that debut was, it helps to look back at where he started. His earlier project, Shy Season, came out in 2021 and opened at #3 on the Billboard 200. That showed the kind of fan base he had built before any of the legal chaos even started. All eyes on Shiest, debuting at #7, right in the middle of one of the most talked about legal situations in recent rap history, proves that audience didn't go anywhere. If anything, the loyalty only got stronger. Now, let's get into what those numbers actually mean on the business side, because this is where Gucci Mane's position becomes impossible to overlook. Every single one of those 40,000 units moved matters. Every Spotify stream, every YouTube view, every playlist placement, every TikTok that used a snippet from the album, all of it generated real money. And because Gucci Mane still owns the masters and controls the label structure that put this project out, every dollar flowing in from this release moved through a system that he built, that he still runs, and that nobody can cut him out of. Think about the irony of that for a second. Pooh Shiesty allegedly tried to rob Gucci Mane as a way to break free from exactly that kind of arrangement. Instead, Gucci turned around, dropped the album through that same structure, and let the music do exactly what music does. It made him rich, while Pooh Shiesty sat in a cell watching it happen from the inside. Now, let's actually talk money, because this is where the scale gets real. A number. One spot on US Apple Music isn't just a talking point or a screenshot for social media. It's a commercial signal that moves across every major platform at the same time. When a project sits at the top of Apple Music, it's almost always performing strong on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Tidal simultaneously. The visibility compounds across all of them at once, and most people never actually sit down and work through what that looks like financially. So, let's do the math right now and make it plain. Streaming payouts across major platforms average somewhere between $3 and $5 per 1,000 streams. For a clean working number, let's use $4 per 1,000. At that rate, 10 million streams on a single song generates around $40,000 in gross streaming revenue. Push that to 50 million streams, and you're looking at roughly $200,000. Hit 100 million streams, and that number climbs to around 400,000. And when you cross 500 million streams, which is exactly where a catalog record like Back in Blood has landed, you're sitting at approximately $2 million from streaming alone. And that's just the streaming side. That doesn't count sync licensing fees, YouTube content ID revenue, radio performance royalties, international licensing deals, or any of the other revenue channels attached to the actual recording. Every one of those streams also triggers payouts through secondary systems that stack on top of the base streaming number. The full picture is considerably larger than the streaming math alone. Now take all of that and multiply it across 16 tracks on All Eyes on Shiesty, each one building its own streaming numbers independently. Every track has the potential to find a different audience, hit a different playlist, go viral on a different platform. The album as a whole isn't just one revenue stream, it's 16 of them running simultaneously, all contributing to the same bottom line that Gucci Mane controls. Then add the catalog effect on top of that. When a new album drops and performs well, it doesn't just generate revenue on its own. It acts as a marketing engine for everything the artist has ever released. Listeners who discover All Eyes on Shiesty for the first time immediately start pulling up Shiesty Season. Old mixtapes, early singles, deep cuts they never heard before. That catalog reactivation produces a second wave of streaming revenue that runs parallel to the new project's numbers. And it doesn't require a single extra dollar of promotion to trigger it. Back in Blood alone has racked up hundreds of millions of streams since it dropped in 2021. That song hasn't stopped working a single day since. Every stream it pulls today, every TikTok that drops it in the background, every playlist it lands on, all of that keeps generating cash. And every dollar that comes from those streams flows back through the master recording structure, through 1017, through Atlantic, and right into a position where Gucci Mane holds a financial stake in the outcome. So here's how the money actually moves, and why that reported figure of $20 to $25 million attached to Gucci Mane starts to make complete sense once you understand the mechanics. Gucci isn't personally sitting at a desk collecting a check every time someone hits play on a Pooh Shiesty record. That's not how any of this works. What he holds is something more structural. Through 1017's label setup and its relationship with Atlantic Records, he sits inside the master recording revenue chain on the side that receives the largest share of what the music produces. That's a very different position than just being an artist getting royalty checks. Let's break down how that structure actually functions. Atlantic Records is a major label. That means it has the full infrastructure to distribute music on a global scale, pitch records to playlist curators, handle commercial radio placement, and manage every layer of a major release's commercial life. 1017 operates as a label in partnership with Atlantic, and that partnership means the two sides negotiated up front exactly how the gross revenue from their jointly released recordings gets divided. Atlantic pulls its share off the top for distribution and label services. Whatever's left after that flows back to 1017. Then, from 1017's portion, a separate contractual split between the label and each individual artist determines how much goes where. The masters are the engine driving all of this. The master recordings are the original finished recordings of songs. Whoever controls those masters controls the primary income stream from everything the music generates commercially. When 1017 puts out a Pooh Shiesty record, the label participates in the revenue flow, according to its deals with the artist and its separate deal with Atlantic. Once you strip out distribution costs, publishing obligations, producer royalties, marketing spend, administrative overhead, and any other contractual expenses, what remains gets split between the label and the artist based on exactly what their contract says. Here's where a number has circulated online, and it's worth paying attention to. Discussion around Pooh Shiesty's deal with 1017 has suggested his personal royalty rate sits at roughly 7% of revenue after recoupment. Whether that specific rate applies uniformly across every revenue stream or only certain categories is the kind of fine print that actual entertainment contracts handle very differently depending on the income type. Publishing royalties, master royalties, and performance royalties can all carry completely different rates even within the same overall deal. The numbers don't always behave the same way across categories, but the principle holds firm, and the math behind it is hard to argue with. If 7% flows to the artist's side, then the remaining 93% is distributed among the label, the distributor, publishing participants, and other contractual stakeholders. Gucci Mane's position inside that structure puts him firmly on the side of the equation that captures the significantly larger share of whatever the music generates. That's the structural advantage of owning the label rather than signing to one. And then there's recoupment, which is one of the most important and most misunderstood parts of how label deals actually work. Think about everything 1017 invested in Pooh Shiesty over the years, before a single royalty check was ever written. Recording costs, video production budgets, marketing campaigns, promotional expenses, legal fees, tour support. The label fronts all of it up front, and the contract is very clear about what happens next. The artist's royalty share is used to pay all of that back before any personal royalty money actually reaches the artist. Until the account is fully recouped, the checks don't flow to the artist's pocket. That recoupment clause matters enormously when you're trying to understand who profits most from a record that generates tens of millions of streams. While the artist is paying back advances and expenses through their royalty share, the label's portion keeps flowing. The structure is designed so the label recoups its investment first, and Gucci's position at the top of that structure means he benefits from that design every single time a record performs. Even at a 7% royalty rate, every dollar generated goes straight toward wiping out the recoupment balance first. Pooh Shiesty could have a fully charting album sitting on hundreds of millions of streams and still walk away with essentially nothing in his pocket. That's not some hidden secret or backroom conspiracy. That's just how the music business operates. And it's the exact dynamic that reportedly drove his boiling frustration with 1017 to a breaking point. That frustration, according to what's been reported, is what ultimately put him in federal custody. When you feel locked into a system that keeps generating wealth around you while you personally see none of it, the pressure can become unbearable. And for Pooh Shiesty, that pressure allegedly reached its worst moment inside a Dallas recording studio. Now, that $20 to $25 million figure tied to Gucci Mane's earnings from Pooh Shiesty's music, that's not one single streaming payout sitting in someone's bank account. It's the full accumulated financial picture built up over time. It covers the artist's catalog, the new album releases, and the broader economic value the entire 1017 relationship has generated since day one. This is long money, not a one-time windfall. When Back in Blood was climbing the charts and stacking hundreds of millions of streams, money was flowing. When Shiesty Season was being consumed by fans from coast to coast, money was flowing. When All Eyes on Shiest hit #1 and sent a fresh wave of listeners back through the older catalog, money kept right on flowing. Every peak, every viral moment, every playlist placement, it all added to the pile. And every single cent of it runs through the same contractual structure that Pooh Shiesty allegedly tried to escape at gunpoint inside that Dallas studio. The system didn't stop working just because he wanted out of it. His incarceration makes the whole situation even more striking. Pooh Shiesty can't tour. He can't perform live. He can't chase brand deals, show up to events, or do any of the outside income moves that working artists use to build wealth beyond their recordings. The concerts, the appearances, the endorsements, none of that is available to him right now. His recorded catalog is the only thing out there working on his behalf. And because the label controls how those recordings are distributed and monetized, Gucci Mane's financial position doesn't depend on Pooh Shiesty being free at all. The music earns whether the artist is present or not. That's the raw, real power of owning master rights. The streaming flywheel effect around All Eyes on Shiest is worth taking a minute to really understand. When a new album drops, it creates a wave of attention. That attention drives streams on the new project, sure, but it also pulls curious listeners back into the older catalog. Those older records start generating their own fresh revenue on top of everything else, which adds directly to the overall valuation of the catalog as a whole. For a body of work that includes a genuine cultural moment like Back in Blood, that kind of reactivation carries serious dollar value. First week numbers are just one chapter of a much longer story. Catalog income doesn't dry up after the debut week hype fades. It compounds. It keeps moving for months, for years, and in some cases, for literal decades. The $20 to $25 million figure being floated in connection with this situation reflects that longer, wider view of what a catalog is actually worth over time. And Gucci Mane sits comfortably on the right side of that structure. The alleged confrontation in Dallas didn't shift his contractual position in any legally meaningful way. Whatever documents Pooh Shiesty may have tried to get signed under duress, forced paperwork doesn't hold up. It didn't free him from his deal. The federal arrests that followed didn't pause the label's ability to release and monetize his music either. Business kept moving. The album dropped under 1017 and Atlantic just as planned. It charted, the catalog kept streaming, and the money kept flowing in the exact same direction it was already heading, long before January 2026 entered the picture. Here's where the full story starts coming together. He built one of the most valuable young rap catalogs of that era, with projects like Shy Glizzy Season and Back in Blood serving as the backbone. Then he went to federal prison in 2022. He came out in October 2025 with his fanbase still intact, his catalog still spinning, and his commercial value barely touched. But somewhere along the way, the money his contract was putting in his pocket stopped feeling like enough. What allegedly happened next is where this story gets wild. According to federal charges, he arranged an armed confrontation in Dallas in January 2026, reportedly trying to force a label release through intimidation. That's not a negotiation tactic. That's a federal crime. And it didn't work. Gucci Mane publicly dropped Pooh Shiesty from the roster, announcing it to the world, but made clear he was still bound to 1017. The label wasn't going anywhere. Then August 7th, 2026 arrived. All Eyes on Shahs hit streaming platforms through 1017 and Atlantic, debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200, landed at number 1 on US Apple Music, and kept the commercial momentum rolling right through the same label structure the alleged confrontation was supposed to dismantle. The album performed, the numbers moved, and the system that was supposedly the problem turned out to be the engine behind the success. Gucci Mane's reported earnings of $20 to $25 million represent the financial result of that entire arc. Every release, every stream, every deal stacked across years. Did he plan for it to play out exactly this way? Probably not every detail. But here's the thing. The contractual structure he built placed him in a position where even an alleged attempt to break free changed absolutely nothing. The rights were still in place. The label was still active. The music was still valuable. When the album was ready, the machine ran exactly the way it was designed to. That's what people miss when they talk about this story. 10 Steps Ahead isn't about predicting every specific detail. It's about constructing a structure so solid that it holds even when someone is actively trying to tear it apart. Pooh Shiesty allegedly wanted out because he believed Gucci Mane was standing between him and the bag. But the real twist is that the music kept working for Gucci Mane, while Pooh Shiesty was fighting that same system from inside a federal case. The catalog didn't care about the drama, it just kept generating. And by the time anybody counted the numbers, Gucci Mane had reportedly pulled $20 to $25 million from the music Pooh Shiesty wanted to control. That's the detail worth sitting with. Not the confrontation, not the federal charges, the gap between who wanted the money and who actually collected it. The biggest lesson buried inside all of this isn't about robberies or courtrooms. It comes down to one thing: rights. Whoever controls the master recordings controls the income stream. Whoever built the label structure gets to collect from it, regardless of what goes sideways between the personalities involved. When an artist tries to escape that system without changing who actually owns the recordings, the system doesn't pause. It doesn't flinch. It just keeps running without them. Think about what that really means. You can be in a federal holding cell. The streams don't stop. The catalog doesn't pause. The money doesn't wait for you to sort out your situation. The infrastructure operates independently of whoever is fighting over it. And the only person that structure benefits is the one who built it and holds the rights to it. Pooh Shiesty wanted freedom. But in the music business, freedom isn't something you demand at gunpoint in a Dallas studio. Real freedom comes from owning your masters, from controlling the recordings that generate the income, from being the person whose name is on the rights when the streaming check clears. That's the version of power that actually lasts. Everything else is noise, because when the dust settles, when the federal case is still pending, when the album is out, when the streams are climbing, and when the Billboard chart has moved on to the next story, the only person sitting comfortably on the other side of all of it is the one who controlled the rights from day one. In this situation, that was Gucci Mane, quietly, contractually, and completely. Will Pooh High Steve ever actually see real money from his music? That's the question sitting at the center of all of this. And honestly, it's one worth sitting with for a minute. Because this isn't just his story. Every artist who's ever been handed a contract they didn't fully understand, every musician who signed because they were excited and trusted the wrong people, they're all watching situations like this and hoping someone finally gets it right. So, what does this whole thing tell us? It tells us that talent alone doesn't protect you. The paperwork does. Knowing what you're signing, having someone in your corner who actually reads the fine print, that's what separates the artists who build wealth from the ones who build someone else's. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think he ever sees a real payout? And if this video finally laid it all out the way it deserved to be laid out, hit that like button and subscribe, because this is exactly what we do here. We get into the money, the moves, and all the stuff the headlines gloss right over. See you in the next one.